Thanks for tuning in to Totally Not a Podcast, our new weekly show where we review each and every new Dragon Ball Daima episode. We did it! We're finally here! Episode 18! It did the thing! It got everybody what they wanted and or hated. We're going to get into it. Hello.
Hello. Mark is extra pumped. He hit the gym. He's juiced out. Look at him go.
Oh, did you just get your pump on? Is that true?
Yeah.
I went late today. I usually go in the morning, but I went late today. Yeah.
Well, It is a podcast, and it is episode 18 with some crazy stuff that happened, but I actually want to kick things off talking a little bit about the show as a whole, because we got many an interview from Akio Ioku, the founder of Capsule Corporation Tokyo, who sort of kind of stole Dragon Ball from Shueisha, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the history behind that. I feel like there's an entire video in that, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot of madness that happened there. But yeah, there was a fun interview where, you know, it told us a lot of stuff we already knew, that, you know, Toriyama was super involved, most involved he'd ever been, not just memes this time, designed, you know, all the world, background characters, main characters, loads of stuff. But what it did confirm is that the idea behind the show was to create a story in the same spirit as GT, which makes a lot of sense given what happened today in this episode, and also that it was aimed towards audiences of all ages, but mainly designed to be enjoyed by children. And that was all about bringing new people into the franchise, hence the recap in episode 1 and the recap at the start of many of the episodes. I was curious if we had any thoughts about that, first of all, whether that sort of changes how you feel about anything. There's a couple more details I want to bring up, but let's start there.
About what specifically?
Specifically about this sort of being, I guess, Toriyama's GT, in a way. It's essentially, it sort of sounds like essentially what he did with the Broly movie, where it's like, okay, here's the kind of DNA there. It's not even really going to be the same. It just has a couple of beats, but I'm curious as to how you feel about all that.
Yeah, it kind of. I mean, like, it's probably the same way as I felt about the Broly movie. When the Broly movie was announced, Dragon Ball Super Broly, I mean, I was kind of like, oh, okay, and they're doing Dragon Ball Minus. Oh, okay, but then when I got it, I really liked it, and I think this experience with Daima wasn't exactly, you know, analogous, but it was like, I mean, like, I don't think I've made it any secret that I didn't really enjoy Dragon Ball GT, but I've enjoyed this vastly more. It's just a question of just the approach. Like, it's not, like, I've said it, I don't think this is a novel or particularly hot take that anyone hasn't heard me say before a million times, but it, like, the disparate elements of GT are not what I necessarily have an issue with. It was always the execution and just Toriyama taking those disparate elements that are perfectly fine and turning them into his own thing. You know, nothing but good things can come from that, or at least positivity can come from that anyway, in the right direction. So yeah, that's overall my impression. It's just, yeah, it's a Toriyama version of something that wasn't his stuff before. I didn't like the old Broly movies. I do like the new Broly movie because of that sort of like direct involvement that led to sort of a good Toriyama feeling with it and all, yeah. Same thing with Daima,
I think, because, you know, we kind of went in knowing that this is going to be sort of GT-esque and that it was Toriyama involvement. So none of that was new to me necessarily.
No.
That definitely the new recontextualizing thing is just that, like, kind of the idea for the series was not specific, not even just that it was for kids, but it was for kids of Dragon Ball fans.
Yes.
Like, you know, Dragon Ball, you know, you had friends back in the 80s and 90s and then on into the 2000s. And now those kids have grown up and had kids of their own. And they were like, well, this show is for kids of Dragon Ball fans. And that really recontextualizes the whole thing where, like, yeah, it's for kids, but specifically it's for kids in a way that the parents that also love Dragon Ball can really enjoy it as well. So it's not like, I don't know, it's not like...
I was going to say, yeah, like it's accessible in a way that works for new fans, but it's also got plenty of familiar nostalgic elements for, you know, the parents of those kids. So it's like, you know, it's sort of working at many different levels. I think maybe the most interesting aspect of this interview was the revelation that this anime began production before the story was even complete, which is kind of wild to me. We sort of had like a vague comment there, and then there was an interview today that sort of followed up on that a little bit, that basically spoke about how like there were a lot of back and forths. They were sort of conceptualizing as they were going along, and then they were like throwing ideas, to one another, Toriyama and the script writing team, script writer, I suppose, and Ioku himself. And that the overall feeling while making it was that it felt like the weekly manga serialization again, where, it wasn't just completely set in stone from the get-go. It was kind of a fluid production. This was something that was in the works for years. And that they created it without really like a deadline in mind. It was just, it's done when it's done, and we're gonna do what we want. I think that's maybe the most interesting context to come from all this, given some of the issues we've had and also some of the things that we've really liked.
Yeah, I think there's definitely I think the things that you get from that are positive are obvious, and I think there are maybe equally as obvious, but perhaps not so. There are drawbacks to that are like, we can get into that if we want to this episode, but there are obvious, plus sides to that. Like, I mean, it's evident that this entire series has been gorgeous with all that, extra prep time as well.
It's in a weird place because, I don't know, most anime, or at least most Dragon Ball anime that we have dealt with, have been like started production before the story was finished. So on the one hand, that's not necessarily new. No. But Daima had a very different production environment and a lot more lead time. But apparently even still, the story wasn't quite done. So it's in this weird state where it's kind of the same as before, but also very much not the same, but not completely different. I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah, it's a funny mix. It's like, obviously with something like Super, the Tournament of Power was not a thought in people's minds when like Universe 6 was being done, for example.
Yeah.
But, that's
I would imagine even going further than that, when they're introducing Goku Black, they probably had at best the bare bones idea of where that was going to go by the end. At best.
Yeah. No doubt. So yeah, it's quite funny that like that approach for a 100+ episode series that had like one of the worst schedules of all time kind of also made its way into something that had one of the best production schedules in a while. It's an interesting one. But yeah, like you said, I think, the pros and cons of that are fairly obvious. Pros are that, the characters have been fun and felt authentic. The comedies felt good. The visuals have looked good. The cons are, of course, these elements that have felt less thought out, and we've been a little bit baffled by them considering the planning time that was had. But now that makes sense. So anyway, I think without further ado, we can jump into the episode. Kicking off right immediately off the end of episode 17, Goku is Super Saiyan 3, jumping straight into battle here. Now, I actually want to lead with Tyson on this, because I think that's one of the most interesting. What's one of the most interesting parts of this fight is that it immediately shifts the vibe of the battle. Where last week everyone was trying and like nothing was really working, it was a complete wash. And I know that, yourself and Kaiser Neko, had a couple issues with that. They're like, I don't know if I'm like quite as engaged with this because it's not feeling like a back and forth. It's just feeling like a one-sided failure. Did you change your mind at all on that? Or did you still feel the same? Did this sort of make things better for you because now Super Saiyan 3 is doing something? It's a less even keel battle. How did you feel about that?
Very conflicted. Because there being some tiny bit of progression in the like structure of the fight is good, but I kind of felt like it swung a bit too hard, where we went from like 7 different people trying to do anything to Glorio, and we spend the entire episode being like, nope, it literally did absolutely nothing, to Goku going Super Saiyan 3, and suddenly we spend like a minute and a half of him just beating his ass. Which, I don't know. Maybe the pendulum swung a bit too far. I don't know if you guys felt this way, but and now to be fair, the part where it's just Super Saiyan 3 Goku versus Goma is fairly short in the episode. But I don't know if you guys felt this way, but him so handily dealing with Goma for that small period of time kind of made some of the later stuff in this episode feel weird. where it's like, okay, he was already beating ass. Now he transforms and he's beating ass. What changed here other than that he's back on his feet? I don't know. Is that just me?
No, I think I totally get what you're saying, and I kind of felt something similar. It's kind of hard, right? Because at the end of the last episode, because of like the way it ended and sort of like the kind of like, you know, when Goku strikes that like Super Saiyan 3 pose, you're thinking, okay, we're going to have a real big push here, so anything can happen, you know, so let's see what's going to happen. I don't think I felt it as nearly as strong as what you're describing, but I did feel something like that. I will say that whatever kind of sort of fighting Goku had in the first half of this episode with Super Saiyan 3, I don't think he's nearly as dominant as he was later on. Whether or not that matters to you, I will say that I do agree that there could have been a bit more of a transitionary period between doing absolutely nothing with a group of people versus Goku managing to hold his own against Goma to some extent in 3. I think there is something to be said about like some kind of, you know, area in there.
I should say it's also throughout the episode, and we'll get to this, but throughout the episode, a recurring like thing, a recurring motif is that like the Tertian Oculus, the third eye, is like, I don't know, like reacting or like upping the ante. I don't know. It's a magic eyeball, so it's hard to say, but it is presented in a way that addresses this. Like it's not like that it's not addressed at all. It is presented in a way. And I should also say it's what we're talking about here didn't like ruin my day or anything. It was just something that I was like, yeah, maybe we could have done this a little bit better, but I was still enjoying it.
Yeah, I think that's like it's not something that bothered me, but I think it's a fair observation. And I think one thing you really hit the nail on the head is that like, it's very short. Goku in Super Saiyan 3 fighting him is so short that I think like it's like had it been drawn out, it probably would have been a bigger issue. But I think it evens itself out with the introduction of Do to the fight, which I don't know about you,
best
but
part
this
of this
was,
episode.
Yes, one of the highlights of this episode. Just what a way to make that
So
character
good.
even better. As a bit of context, he of course joins the fight, and not only joins the fight, he sees Goku with Super Saiyan 3. Takes a cookie from Ku and thinks, well,
a giant cookie.
I want to look like this too. Yeah, giant cookie. Just I love the idea that Ku is rolling around with that stuffed up his ass. Yeah. But no, for me, I thought it was so funny that dude just took one look at Goku and was like, well, I want that hair. I want to scream and have a cool aura.
And the best part is that it worked.
It was kind of like a goofy version of whatever Hit did in like the Universe 6 tournament.
I was going to say it's exactly kind of like how Boo in the Boo arc when he's fighting Super Saiyan 3 Goku, Boo sees Goku do a Kamehameha and me is like, what? And then does a Kamehameha right back. That's what
true.
Yeah.
But like that Do fight as well, like, you know, the Do and Goku kind of like tag team against Goma it's one of my favorite kind of like pieces of action from the episode as well, just because I'm just a huge fan of like action that can like create its own identity based on the participants involved. Like Do is such a unique fighter with a unique physiology that is completely different to Goku's. That like, you know, like when he kind of like shoots the big arm against Goma, and it like goes it's like a big chewing gum string going at him, and then it explodes and grabs him with the big fist. That's such a cool visual, and he throws him around the arena. It does a great job of, and I will be continually talking about the animation for this because I think it does a great job in selling like the scale of the event as well. Like there's a cool kind of like rotating shot as well of like Do and Ku, or no, it isn't Do. It's Tamagami number 1 and Goku, like, and they're just fighting at Goma, and there's like just a great kind of sense of scale of the arena, and like the animation really does a great job of like selling that aspect of the actual encounter. And you know, Do like, I think, I don't know how you guys feel, but the action this week felt like markedly better than last week's, in my opinion.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, like as a whole product, you know, it is, you know, just on a completely different level. I mean, I don't think you can really beat the high points of Ryo Onishi, but you know, that's you know, whatever. I think like the way that it's all presented and put together is just crazy stuff. And there are certain aspects to it that I think, like, if I put aside just like the technical level of stuff and think about like the inventiveness and the way that it's like mapped against the story, I mean, to me, like this was Daima at its very best. It was, you know, phenomenal stuff. The Goku and Do team up especially was so much fun. Like there's just such a great connective tissue between the moves that they're doing. It doesn't feel like, you know, one person attacks and it cuts to the next person and they're attacking. It's like it's weaving all of these moves together, and like you said, like it uses his unique physiology to make this so fun. It's not just punching, kicking. It's like actually selling them on like, you know, their strong suits and what makes them different.
I don't want to derail too long because we got a lot to talk about, but I want to pose a very quick question to you guys.
Okay.
Is Do better than Boo at this point?
Oh yeah, I like him more.
Yeah,
I've never been a huge Boo fan.
I should say, obviously, it's different that Boo spent a lot of his time as a villain. I'm saying, is Do as a character, especially when he's teamed up with the heroes, better than how Boo has been betrayed when he's a good guy in Super or otherwise?
I will say that, like, I think if you want to look at Do on his own, I think the action he offers is more fun than whatever Boo has offered the action in Z. I just think, though, that might be just a byproduct of, like, the schedule this anime has. I don't want to say that, like, you know, Boo is... I mean, like, what we like about Do are all the elements that, like, make him like Boo. But I think the best part about Do is, like, his like, team up with Ku. I think, though, that duo specifically is a duo, and it's kind of hard to kind of separate them. In my mind,
they are definitely a duo. I just think, like, even separate from the schedule, and obviously he's been afforded a lot better, like, animation and choreography. But even outside of just the fights, I feel like Do is a more interesting... It handles the quirkiness of that type of character more interestingly than anything Boo got in Super. Like, Boo is such an interesting character, just as interesting as Do. But the second that he's a good guy and we progress the timeline into Super, they just shove him into a corner and do absolutely nothing with him. And he becomes, he goes from a really interesting character to a legitimately boring character. And anytime I see Do, I feel like I'm seeing a glimpse of what could have been with Boo.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, like, I don't think you can criticize Boo. I mean, you can, but I don't think that's a condemnation of Boo as a character, really. I think a lot of characters felt that way in Super. I think a lot of characters like Ten Shinhan, Yamcha, even Vegeta to a certain extent, like, and Gohan certainly early on, like, those are all characters that were sort of like bastardized at the beginning of Dragon Ball Super and largely towards the middle. I don't think I can like say definitively, like, I mean, like, because like Boo had like really fun moments as well in Super when he got like skinny and shit. It's just the story had nothing
one
for him.
episode.
I know it's one episode. Hey, that's still 5% of Daima. So like, I mean, I don't know what you're talking about there, but like, I think if you slot Boo in place of Do in this, I think he could do largely everything that he's doing. It's just, I think what makes Do sort of better for me is the fact that he's part of a duo. So there you go.
Look at the puns.
I got the jokes.
Yeah.
That was like 8 different Do puns in a row. Incredible work.
Yeah, no, I definitely get what you're getting at. Like, I think, you know, Boo within his arc in Z is, of course, fun, and there's all the great stuff with Satan, and, you know, all of the evolutions and whatnot are great. You know, no, I don't think there's much of a competition when it comes to that, but I think in the context of a post-series handling, I'm 100% with you that, like, Do is a lot more fun. Yes, I agree with Mark that I think that's partly because his stuff with Ku is so much fun. Yeah. But also, I think just like the inventiveness of what they've done with him has been more interesting, as you said, than what was done in Super. Like, yes, he does turn skinny at one point, and that's cool. But otherwise, Boo has kind of just been like, I'm going to throw a tantrum and then fall asleep. Like, that's just been... it's just it's that's been repeated a lot, and so it's kind of hard for me not to have soured on that a little bit, and so like to see that kind of character done really well in Daima is exciting. So I think I'm with you on that. You know, Tamagami 1 joins the fight for a little bit. The cookie wears off, which I think is why
immediately
he joins, right? Yeah,
really enjoyed this joke. The amount of time that Ku gets to be not Super Saiyan 3 is so funny.
Yeah.
Gets
He just
basically
Yeah.
nothing.
burns through it in a second.
Yeah.
I think it's like literally like a minute of screen time. Is it
Not
or-
even a
or-
minute. I
yeah,
think it's
not even a
literally
minute.
like 35 seconds.
Yeah, he learns
Yeah.
the hard way why Super Saiyan 3 is not utilized that much. Yeah, so the tides very much turn on the battle here, despite, Tamagami 1 jumping in to help, it doesn't really work. The eye is just
Adapting.
kind of crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that's one
Yeah.
thing that this episode does a lot, plays a lot with, is just like, if things are going wrong for Goma, the eye just, it'll do it. The eye will glow something, and then there he goes. It's better now.
Mark,
which is
how do
yeah.
you feel about that? I really want to know.
So, I didn't bother me as much last week about damage not being sustained, but I like Goma eats a lot of like attacks in this episode, but I don't think I'm at any point am I thinking, oh, he's getting tired. He's getting
He's
fatigued.
against the ropes. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not wearing down. Like, is there even a moment where like he's like beaten up? I mean, like, there's an entire
Yes.
okay, good. Because I, for whatever reason, I'm just constantly envisioning him with this like pristine facade. So like, yeah, in terms of the eye though, I don't want to belabor the point because I hit it quite hard last week. But Goma isn't a compelling final villain for me, and the reason that is largely is that I don't really believe in his motivation as a character is really compelling. But more than that, it's he's just exceptionally goofy, and his strength comes not from himself but from this MacGuffin that he has in his head, of which we have very little understanding of its limitation or how it works or anything like that. It's just magic, which can be fine. Lots of Dragon Ball characters have used magic to great effect, Boo being one of them, and doing, of course, as well. We've sung his praises at the beginning of this podcast. But I think in order for me to find the fight compelling, there needs to be a clear delineation between the progression towards the end. Like for Goku, particularly towards the beginning of this fight, there's a very good sequence where Goku as Super Saiyan 3 is clearly at maximum fatigue. That's the story of his character in that moment. He's near the end. And so when the next thing happens, we like, oh, fuck, that's okay, great. We're kind of taken from a low point to a high point. But when it came to Goma, I don't think at any point during this did I feel like he was kind of like doing this, and if he was,
Right.
it was because the eye, and that always feels like an ass pull because it's magic. And so I kind of, I don't know, the jury's still out on how I feel. Obviously I'm going to have to wait until the series is over, but right now, when it came to Goma and his interaction with the characters in the story, it was kind of like he's as strong as he needs to be in order to facilitate an interesting fight, which isn't as interesting to me.
AJ, am I to presume that it didn't bother you very much?
Correct. Yeah. I don't really care. Like I'm kind of back on the Daima train, and I said that a couple episodes ago. Like I find the idea of a completely insane, uncontrollable power like this really exciting. I totally get.
But he
what
is in
you're
control,
saying.
no?
Say
He
again,
is in
sorry.
control. He is in control, though, no?
Well, so he is.
Like he said, I need
but
help, and then the eye does a thing.
but the eye is. I'm curious. I'm curious about this eye. Like I don't trust it. It's weird, but it's cool.
No, I mean, like I think it's okay to not know about the eye and for that to be a plot point. But I think at this point we need to have known quantities to some extent. I mean, like so just to pick a random example, Cell, in the Cell arc, Perfect Cell. We kind of got a baseline of what he could do against someone like Super Vegeta, and that was impressive and great and all that kind of stuff. That was still early in the arc. He was an unknown quantity. But then we got the first round of the Cell games against Goku, and in that fight we got to see, okay, we've got a good idea now of where Cell is relative to Goku, and therefore the rest of the cast, until we get the reveal that Gohan is actually the man. That sort of was, I feel like that fight was pretty important for us to know both characters and where they stood. And when you have a situation like this where the action is honestly stupendous. I can't fault the action. The
So
action is
good.
incredible in this episode. But it's just when it comes from a a fight psychology standpoint, I don't have a baseline or understanding of where Goma is relative to anything. So I don't know if his efforts are incredible or not incredible, or if the damage that's being sustained by these incredible looking attacks from Goku are going to do anything. Because like a lot of the Super Saiyan 3 stuff looks awesome and Goma is reacting accordingly, but then it's actually nothing.
Yeah.
But is that not? Do you not find that exciting?
No.
I really enjoy it.
Well,
I love the
I
idea that
find-
like, you do these things, it feels like things are maybe working, but they're not, and then like when you think the tide is about to turn, like
I know what you're saying.
you get a full
I know what you're
Godzilla
saying.
moment. Like I find that.
Yeah, no,
find that
I totally
great.
get what you're saying. So my version of that would be what happened with Super Vegeta in Z. So like Cell like so like one of my problems here with Goma is that when he's being hit by Super Saiyan 3 and Super Saiyan 3 do, if you want to call him that, is that he reacts as if it's like, oh shit, my shit's being pushed in. I'm actually not dealing with this as well as I could have. But then it's actually, oh wait, no, it's actually fine. And the reason why that bothers me, and it didn't bother me when Cell did it to Super Vegeta, was because that was sort of like a trick that was sort of a trick Cell was doing to Super Vegeta. To kind of like, goad his like ego and to show that he's truly perfect and that he doesn't stand a chance. That kind of played into his character. Whereas this is just kind of like, it kind of comes across as like Goma being sort of maybe unaware of how strong he is, and then like,
Or just inconsistent is really what it feels like.
well, I mean, like, it could be like, so if I want to be super charitable, it could be just the fact that like, Goma is just not a fighter. He has no idea what it's like to be a strong guy, and therefore has no idea how strong he actually is. And
Definitely.
when he gets attacked, he reacts as if he's weaker than he actually is. That's me being extremely charitable now, by the way. But it can also come across as what Tyson's describing, where it kind of feels inconsistent.
Obviously Mark and I are basically on the same page in terms of just not necessarily being on board with Goma as the like big bad guy. But I think where it comes from for me is that like structurally, if you look at like a villain or especially a big bad, there's two really important things at play. One is, how does this character relate to the heroes, right? And on that front, Goma just doesn't have anything. He's not interacted with them. He did the wish, so he made the thing happen. But outside of that, he's been off in this separate little room, has not interacted with, has no history, has no ties to these characters other than starting the series. And that's
And
kind
sending
of it. So,
and sending guards against them, really. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
so that element is lacking. And then the other bit is kind of from a more action standpoint is, how does the villain's character inform the way that they fight? Like you think about someone like Hit. Hit's character is this like really grizzled, calculated hitman type guy. And so his action and the way his action sequences play out against heroes are informed by that. There isn't this is something that Goma has a little bit, because obviously his thing at this point is guy roided out by the eyes, or the singular eye. So we're there a little bit, but it's lacking because that's kind of the end of it. The only time so far that we've really had his action informed by who he is as a character is the bit from last episode where he's trying to fight Vegeta and he starts accidentally breaking shit because he has no idea what he's doing. That was great. But outside of that, it's just kind of felt like you could take Goma, Control X him, and Control V in pretty much anyone else and slot the eye in, and we could be having the same fight. Like there's nothing
That's true,
There's nothing about this fight that has to be Goma. And so those two things are what is detracting from Goma as a villain for me. Not to say that I didn't enjoy this fight, but those structural elements are what's lacking for me.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Sure, yeah. But I feel like the conversation has pivoted, because you'll never get me to disagree with you when we're talking about Goma as a character and how that fits into like the narrative of the story. Like, we all unanimously agree that Goma sat in a room for 17 episodes and did fuck all, really. But in terms of like how the eye functions, I have no issue with that from a presentation point of view, because it's that immovable force feeling that, you know, is I think that's always going to be effective in a story of just like the heroes are wailing on this thing that is just feels insurmountable. And I think it's especially in something as well directed as this, it's hard not to feel, I think, engaged by that.
Well, I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, if it was just this personality-less, this vapid, like, if we're fighting the Eye and not Goma, then yeah, fine.
Yeah.
I just kind of feel constantly aware of the fact that, like I think Tyson made a very good point there in saying that, like, Goma could be anybody. You could put, like, and I think that's a problem. So, like, it's difficult for me to separate the lack of enthusiasm I have for a big bad at the end of a fight, because that's sort of what the whole tension really hinges on. For me, at least, I like a lot of it comes from both the heroes and the villain. They're dynamic together, and when Gomez is missing that element and it's just really hinging on the MacGuffin aspect of the Eye, it's kind of like it leaves a lot to be I kind of feel like there's something missing, and that's kind of, I think, what was what I was feeling particularly in this early section, with regards to Goma and the Eye.
I would also push back against the notion that it's hard not to enjoy or be excited about that. I really think that you will find, especially as time goes on, it is a very, very common opinion that the Eye just kind of magic no jutsuing Goma into dealing with whatever he needs to do for this fight will become a very common complaint. And again, I'm not saying that is the source of any problem for me necessarily. It's something, to me, it's fine. It doesn't upset me. I'm like, okay, sure, that's here. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Like the Eye, if you want to look at it that way, if you want to look at the Eye as some kind of immovable, almost insurmountable thing for Goku and Co to kind of get past, like at that point, then it's just sort of a Jiren. Like Jiren was that. Like he was this insurmountable nothing character, and like there's tension that can
bring him up, because that. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm really glad that you bring him up, because this whole fight, I enjoy the same way that I enjoyed Jiren, where I enjoyed this on the spectacle and the action and the choreography and some of the smaller like character beats that happen in this.
Yeah.
But
me too.
It is devoid of some additional girth because of some lacking stuff, much like Jiren. But similar to episode 130, even if I don't really care about Jiren as a character, and if I did, that would make the fight way cooler, that didn't stop me from watching episode 130 like with my eyes wide open and a smile on my face. It's the exact same feeling this episode as episode 130 for me.
Yeah, I think the comparison is apt. I think I would maybe push back a little bit and say that, like, I think Gomar, despite sitting in a room for that amount of time, has so much more personality than someone like Jiren.
I would agree.
But I would agree. I also think that, like, you know, when it comes to a lot of the transformations and spectacle moments across the series, like, to me, like, the various Buu forms, the various Frieza forms, whatever, like, you know, for me, it's like, okay, this is cool, we're upping the ante, and the Eye is just doing that, you know?
Yeah, but the Eye is doing that in place of what could have been, like, character, genuine...
Again, I don't disagree with that. I'm just... I think we're all on the same page. That, like,
it's just... It's hard for me to kind of separate my enjoyment from something when my enjoyment comes not just from the spectacle, the presence of like a big entity that we need to overcome. There necessarily needs to be that other character element, and because of that, then my enjoyment goes down as a result.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I'm focusing on now, because I'm focusing not on what's there, which is clearly very impressive, and everyone should enjoy it, and I'm happy that they are. But it's just like I'm just kind of pointing out, just for the sake of balance, that like. I felt that there was something missing, and you know, what's missing is what we were discussing.
Yeah. But let me ask this. I feel like I know the answer, but how would you differentiate this from from something like Frieza, where the forms they happen?
Well, because Frieza is pre-established. Not only is this super strong guy, but as soon as his fight begins, he establishes. These are my transformations. I have these because I'm so strong that I need to, like, suppress my power. So it's established that he has this limitless wall, and every time he comes up against a pinch, he just sheds another layer. He tips into his reserves of power that we already know exists. It would be, I think, a more apt comparison would be if at the beginning of the Frieza fight, he establishes this is my base form, and then as soon as he runs into trouble, he invents a new transformation, and then as soon as he runs into trouble against Piccolo, he invents a new transformation ad infinitum until the end. Like that, I think would be a more apt comparison in terms of like, quote unquote, ass pullery.
I'm arguing for the sake of arguing now, but could you not argue that the Eye has been established as this extremely powerful thing, something so strong that it allowed Abra to rule, to subjugate an entire demon world, to be such an issue that Dabra had to cast it away, that Gomar wanted and had to wish these people into children because it could be an issue? Like, could you not argue that there is a narrative there that has built?
I think what you have described about it being established as this magical thing, that it's like a fucking like nuclear warhead of power, I think that is what helps justify his initial power boost. The fact that he's now something that requires a team up. That doesn't necessarily as well explain why the Eye is like inventing new power as the fight goes on. Those are two kind of separate things, I feel like.
Okay, well,
because even him jumping up in power is something that requires a fair bit of like explanation and suspension of disbelief and stuff, and that's what the Eye is for, and it's totally fine. That's why, you know, when he first got the Eye and then started beating ass, none of us were like, I think it's kind of bullshit that he's this strong, because like no, it was established. This Eye is insane.
Yeah, like,
has the Eye. There you go.
Okay, well, I think I'm done playing Contrarian for the sake of hosting. I think we agree that it was extremely cool. It was cool to watch. It was fun to watch, but narratively not super engaging. I feel like the next point we're about to move to
boy,
will be a source of genuine disagreement.
We're going to be stuck on this one for a while.
And not just me playing devil's advocate. Because in steps Never. Goku on the brink, given a power-up. Boom. Super Saiyan 4. It's back.
In red form.
The hair is now red, well, yeah. Red, burgundy.
Yeah.
You want to be technical.
Like magenta. I don't know. Well, it depends, because it varies from the hair to the fur, right? Like there's slightly
the fur
different
is
shades.
ever so slightly lighter, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, I think before we touch on the story, I would like to ask you, how do you feel about the new design?
The
Thoughts?
design? Oh,
I prefer it. I much prefer it to the original one, yeah. I much prefer it.
Wow,
Okay.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, shoot. Explain, elaborate.
Well, like, it's got, like, so, like, I like the fact, and this isn't going to be a novel, commentary, like, but, like, I do like the fact that they leaned very much into the ape-like monkey aspects of the character. I really do fuck with, like, the longer arms, the way the hair kind of comes off the forearms, and, like, you know, I'm just a big fan of the tail in general, but, like, just the, like, even the color and stuff, like, it just kind of hits my eyes better. I don't know how to say it. Like, again, the fact that they've leaned into the monkey aspects as well with this new form is even sort of explored a bit in the animation that kind of follows it with him kind of like running on his knuckles and all that kind of stuff like there, and like hanging off the tail and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's really kind of leaning into that whole monkey aspect, and I don't know, I really like the kind of like the more different design, because like if it was just the exact same thing again, like, it would have been just kind of trite, but this is sort of novel, so that's where I land on it, really.
I am surprisingly in agreement, and I know that Mark and I saying that we like this design better than the original Super Saiyan 4 design is going to have a bunch of people like triple taking and freaking out. One thing before I get into it in detail, I think one thing that people should keep in mind is that right now, the only version of this form that we've ever seen is kid version. And kid version inherently makes it less badass.
Oh, absolutely. Super Saiyan 3 Goku as a kid just looks like Gotenks, and I immediately hated it.
I don't necessarily agree. I didn't hate it. I think he looks cool.
Oh
But
no,
like,
he just looks like a little hedgehog. I hate it. Sorry, go ahead.
oh, that's great.
Can't
But,
believe you
I mean,
hate Sonic. Wow.
Even separate from that, I think we would both agree that adult Super Saiyan 3 Goku looks about 30 times more badass than kid Super Saiyan 3 Goku, right?
Yep.
So I think the exact same applies here, where even as a kid, little new Daima Super Saiyan 4 Goku looks cool, but he doesn't look anywhere near as cool. You know, you'll like go on Twitter or wherever, and you'll see side-by-side comparisons. Daima Super Saiyan 4 versus GT Super Saiyan 4. And everybody's like, it's not even close. Super Saiyan 4 in GT looks way more badass. And I agree, but again, Goku's a kid right now. I think the design principle itself, where it really, like you said, it plays into the monkey aspect. I really like the exaggerated body proportions, especially with the forearms and hands. I like the tracksuit. I like the little cut-ins of the fur into the chest. I think that's cool.
And the forearms, yeah, that's cool.
I think the badassness of this form is held back by him being a kid, but I think the more and more you start seeing adult fan arts of this around, or maybe
I saw some already on Twitter,
or if maybe somehow we get an adult Super Saiyan 4 Daima Goku in the series, that would really help even further. But I think the more in general you see this in adult form, I think the easier pill it will be, or the easier it will be for people who disagree with us to understand why we feel this way, and not that we're just insane people who hate GT.
Why do people not like the form?
Well, I'm going to jump in because I like the Daima version. I love the original GT version. I think that is a phenomenal design. I think the way that the black hair contrasts against the red and the golden eyes, I like, putting aside any kid adult stuff. Like I agree. Obviously, you know, I feel like it's inevitable that we'll see this in adult form. I'm sure that will be cooler. But I just love everything about the original design. So I think it's great too. I think that will probably always be a favorite for me. But I do love what's here, and I agree that leaning into the monkey aspect is really, really cool. Because I mean, like, you look at the original design for GT, and it had those like big arms as well. Not quite like this, but it did have big arms that largely got ignored in the series and were kind of just gone by the time you got to the fusion stuff. Bringing that back and just going even further with it is extremely cool. I think if there's like one aspect I like actively dislike about the new version, it's the exposed wrists. I don't think they look very good.
I don't get everybody hating on them. I like the receding wrist lines.
I despise them.
I think it's visually
so
interesting, and I think it does well in conveying form of the forearm, like the three-dimensionality of it.
I don't really care that much about it. Like, even if I did say that I liked it, I like it fine. It's good. I don't dislike it. Like, if I were to dislike it, I don't think I could say I hate it. It's the tie-breaking factor for me. Like, I can, like you say that you liked the and like personally, like, I mean, it's totally down to opinion. I totally respect that you prefer the GT version. That's totally fine. I mean, it makes sense. A lot of people do. But like, for me, like, if I wanted to pick something that is completely like unimportant, I could just say, like, you know, like, okay, yeah, the black hair, you really like that, but it was actually the black hair aspect of that design I actually think is better read, because I associate black hair Goku with base Goku, and so it doesn't feel like as much of a transformation for me then that way. Like,
now, see, that's interesting, because if there's any one thing I will unequivocally concede I think is better in the original GT Super Saiyan 4 design, it's the black hair. I agree what you're saying about associating it with base, but just in terms of like actual like color composition, I 100% think it contrasts better with the fur and the rest of the design.
It definitely contrasts better, but I like, you know, I don't necessarily think I like the contrast as much as I like this one.
It is composed better. I think in terms of design, color design, it is almost objectively better. Obviously, it's not objective.
Like, if I were to make an argument for the more uniform color design, I would say that, like, I like the fact that it's a monkey design, and monkey would have all the same colored hair. And so I kind of like it in that respect. It helps tie the design better into like the kind of like primate aspect that they're going for. Whereas if they kept it with like a two different hair colors, it feels more man than monkey.
I definitely don't hate the red on light red. And I think it makes sense. I don't think the red detracts for me. I'm just talking like sheer design chops, sheer like design composition. I think the black hair works better, but I don't think that the red hair is in any way bad necessarily.
No, I mean, winding back a bit, as far as the wrists go, I think like I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed to the idea of having exposed wrists. I just hate the shape. Like it's just like a weird cutout that like extends all the way down the back of the arm too. Like I don't like the way the shapes are. Well, personally,
see, that's
I haven't really paid that much attention to it. Yeah.
I adored the way that not only did it go all the way down the arm in the old form, but it peeked out from underneath the wristbands as well. I thought
that
was
is
really
good.
that
That
is
is cool. The shape is, I think, what makes the cutout make sense to me, because again, it's there. I can almost guarantee you, it's there to help accentuate like 3D form. It's the same way. If you look at what's her name, Android 21, yeah, from Fighters. If you look at Android 21, she in her base like lab coat form, she has that lab coat, and instead of just being like a plain lab coat, it's a checkerboard lab coat with a like center line that helps accentuate the 3D form. It goes like down her boobs and curves around, and then as wherever her body is curving, it helps like mold out that 3D form and make it more functional. I think the shape of the cutout is doing that exact same thing here. It is there to help mold the 3D form of the forearms, especially given how big they are. It's almost like not like a guidepost, but that is what I can almost guarantee you that's what it's there for.
Right.
CHA, objectively
to be clear,
better.
I don't want it to just be a circle, but I don't like the way that it is like it. So it's exposed all on like the underside of the arm, but then it goes all the way down the back. It doesn't.
Yeah, I
like,
think
it
I
doesn't
always kinda-
taper on the back. It's odd. It's almost like someone took the original Super Saiyan 4 and like shaved the underside of the forearm, which
I always
think-
thought it was kind
I
of
think-
following the musculature of the forearm. That's kind of the way I was kind of like thinking about it.
Yes, that is how I perceive it as well.
I just find that very, very ugly, personally.
We get it, AJ. You hate this episode. We get it.
AJ hates the episode.
Oh no, we're going that route again. But yeah, again, like I like how it looks. I have a couple of issues with it. Like I think in terms of color, that's probably my biggest issues with it, where I just think the contrast of the original, not just with the black hair, but I think like the blue belt and sort of the shoes and stuff were probably better there. But I think like leaning into the monkey stuff, really, really cool. But yeah, do we want to now move into the story stuff?
Yeah, we should probably talk about the actual like narrative context of this, which I'm sure Mark is biting at the chomp to get to.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of. The funny thing is, I talked about it last week, right? So like,
Did you say wait, biting at the chomp, champing. At
Shut,
the
move on. There's so much to talk about.
Look, I won't belabor a point. So like, it's just kind of like
wait. Before you go, I want you to know. I want you to know, okay, that I feel like I know what your opinion is going to be because you've spoken about this for a couple of weeks now. I would like you to know in advance that I have thought of some rebuttals, so please look forward to it. Prepare yourself.
Great. Yeah, that's fine.
Put your argument together very carefully.
So the fact that it's a transformation that came from someone else isn't necessarily an issue for me. I will say that, like, Orange Piccolo coming from the Dragon Balls themselves and him having a tie to the Dragon Balls in some capacity is in and of itself a justification for Orange Piccolo. There can be something there for that, and people can like it, and I like the design too. It is less engaging than something like UI was for me, or Super Saiyan was for me, or Gohan Super Saiyan 2 was for me. All those ones are sort of like slow bake transformations built off of character and all that kind of stuff. But that's not to say that the Super Saiyan 4 transformation wasn't built off of character also. Neva has this ability in him, but he has also this proclivity to sort of be a a spectator rather than someone who engages directly with the fight. And so he had everything available to him to not get involved, but it was Goku's character and his willingness to fight through everything and anything. Neva was like willing to then, give him something a little extra, not because it was random, but because it came from was it rather inspired by who Goku was as a character. That is something that is of merit. That is something that is worth something. but it's just like, again, it's just something. It's kind of, I would probably put it somewhere in the region of like, Orange Piccolo. Like it's okay. It's fine. It's just not. It's never going to give me the same sort of rush that like a Gohan transformation was, where his entire character was building to that moment, or the initial Super Saiyan transformation, where the entire arc and really, like Story for Goku was like building to that moment, like, and what Frieza represented for Goku was something massive to overcome. I think just by the nature of who Goma is, he could never offer Goku that sort of emotional pushback that would trigger something truly meaningful. So we got this instead.
I will interject my opinion real quick before we get to you, AJ, because I kind of have a middle ground opinion. So this war is mainly going to be AJ and Mark.
I actually don't think it's going to be a war, having heard.
I don't think it will either.
Yeah.
But I find myself similar to Mark. I think definitely the most analogous transformation in terms of how I feel about it is absolutely Orange Piccolo. I kind of am on the other side though, where I prefer this to Orange Piccolo. Yes, Orange Piccolo relates to the dragon because he's Namekian and he made the Dragon Balls, and sure. But I always found that connection utterly tenuous at best.
Same.
And so much so that it frustrated me. And actively took away. However, I don't hate Orange Piccolo because it looks cool. So that one kind of gets a pass. But narratively speaking, I find Orange Piccolo actually significantly more frustrating than this, where at the least, Neva is well established. We spent quite a bit of time throughout this tiny runtime of a series establishing Neva's ability to awaken shit, basically. At this point, he's basically the awakening shit guy. Like, first time he's introduced,
my talking points. God damn.
Yeah, he first time he's introduced, he awakens the Dragon Balls. He fucks off for a bit. We meet him again. He awakens Tamagami number 2. Fucks off for a bit. Comes back. He awakens Tamagami 3 to fight this. And also he like awakens some other insane powers to like break open the like barriers in between worlds. He's very well established at this, so it's an easier pill
just
to
more
swallow.
of the same.
I still don't love it. I'm still with you, Mark, where it does not relate to Goku as a character.
It doesn't give you a reason for it to. It doesn't really give you a reason to love it.
Yeah, there's not a lot of character or emotional interaction. So I'm still not, narratively speaking, I'm still not looking at this transformation and like standing ovation or anything. But at the minimum, I find it a lot more palatable than something like Orange Piccolo for comparison.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I agree.
This is funny. I so thought this was going to be a big clash, but I think actually we're largely on the same page. Because I had like, I was all prepared for Mark to be like, oh, it just comes out of nowhere, and
I'm a very reasonable person, AJ. I'm a very reasonable person. Okay,
but I think it justifies itself in the, as Tyson said, Neva has been well established at this point as having this crazy magical ability to power things up, which in and of itself is connected to the Namek arc with the Grand Elder and unlocking potential that way. I find this maybe even more palatable than what Elder Kaioshin does with Gohan in the Buu arc, I have to say. And I think like you're so right that this is so much better than something like Gohan Beast that comes out of complete nowhere, something like Blue Evolution, which is like, right, okay, sure, whatever. And a lot of bullshit like that. I think there is more to it than I think I was even expecting, which is nice. And we haven't even gotten any kind of explanation about it yet, because I think
it was just action so far.
Yeah, it's hard to talk too much about it at this point. Without the last 2 episodes, because I think what my hope is at this point is that it will address some of the things that you've both touched on. The main one being that this was something that was given to Goku, and we know from Battle of Gods that Goku does not like that. So I'm sure that will no doubt be addressed at some point. But secondly, it's of course something that he loses, and we'll touch on that specifically when we get to it. But I think that also offers the opportunity for it to be attained again. And I'm curious as to whether that will be something that Goku can attain on his own, whether that will be some kind of aspect to the next couple of episodes, or whether they will do the less interesting thing and just have it be a case of like I guess just building up to it again and like just having it appear.
I think they have to do that because there's no other way to preserve. Now that in the Yoku interview, they were like, yeah, still ties into the main canon with Super. I think they have to have this be something that Neva can give out because otherwise you're going to have the whole, it not existing after this thing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But
yeah.
There are just there are so many inconsistencies in this series that I wouldn't be surprised if they ignored it. But sure, yeah.
One thing I'm interested to talk about a little bit, since we are all way more in agreement on this than I was prepared for.
Look at us, we're all friends.
Yeah. Narratively speaking, not design. Narratively speaking, this versus GT's Super Saiyan 4 transformation.
There are plenty of aspects to like about GT, but I think a big difference maker in GT and Daima, and it'll be something that we're going to harp on again and again and again, is just GT's music is like, GT will have good music from like, every now and then, but I just can't remember a single track from Daima. Like I feel like, well, that's a lie. That's an exaggeration. There are plenty of tracks from Daima that I'll remember. I just don't think I'll ever listen to them in my spare time, really. Or at least I'm not familiar enough with them through the series using it that like I'll ever gain some kind of like profound fondness for it. Because like even with this episode, I can't remember a single standout moment with the music. Is that just me?
Oh, I had issues with the music in this for sure. There was some repetitiveness and the mixing will forever be an issue. I love the Super Saiyan 4 transformation track personally.
I don't.
Oh,
I don't at all.
Well,
I don't remember it.
I'll slink into my corner.
I continue to be really bummed out by the music in this. I think the Super Saiyan 4 transformation theme in Daima is fine. I think it's serviceable. And I in no way think that the reception of any giant series-defining transformation moment should be described as serviceable.
I don't even remember it.
Yeah, that's a bummer. I gotta say, I really find myself surprised that you guys are responding this way about narrative like GT versus Daima for this transformation, because I think the GT narratively, its transformation is miles better, like way better. It still doesn't come close to anything like Super Saiyan 1 or Super Saiyan 2 or maybe even Super Saiyan God. Or Ultra Instinct, but I think it's still miles better. It plays into established stuff with the Great Ape. It plays into his like regaining humanity with Pan, who he spent so much time with, and it relates back to Earth, which he cares about a lot.
Yeah,
like, all my like. I might not be kind of going crazy on it, like, and shouting out, like, this is better than that better, but, like, all my opinions on GT are, like, in those videos. Like, I mean, like, there's plenty to like about GT, and I say as much in those GT videos, even though people like to point at them as, like, Mark's a big hater, but, like, yeah, Super Saiyan 4 is good. Like, so.
Well, it sounded, like, a minute ago when you were responding, it sounded like you are, like, more or less coin toss on this versus the GT.
Well, like, I'm just not, like, so okay, it's hard for me to be jazzed about any particular transformation. Like, I'm not going to get on my soapbox and say, God, I just fucking loved Orange Piccolo. It's whatever. And the same kind of was like for Daima here. I like it a bit more than that, but it's still kind of like, yeah, okay. Super Saiyan 4. I think my thing with that is kind of soured, and whether or not you think this is justifiable is one way or the other. I do think it's better than what we got in Daima by a good bit. I agree with you, but it's like the stuff with Pan, really kind of like the fact that she was a character with a lot of promise at the beginning of the series and then just evolved into being nothing but just bait for Goku to either get emotionally invested, take things seriously, blah blah blah. It's just another one of those moments. It's a good moment to try to kind of like harken into and sort of try to emotionally connect us with a scene. I do agree that like the incorporation of like the Great Ape form and all that kind of stuff is a good addition, and I do like obviously the design. It's really good as well. I will say that I prefer the design in Daima, so that's one point against that for me. But at the same time, like I think like when it comes to like, I think it was being more ambitious and hit more than it missed, and as a result landed in a much better position than Daima's did with the reveal for their Super Saiyan 4.
I agree that like the Pan stuff and the connection to the Azari stuff, there is a narrative weight there that is absent in Daima. Like, I don't like to use the word objectively, but yes, like in terms of it is. But I think all of this will be colored for me by the fact that like the Golden Ape stuff goes on for a while, and that Nozawa Raw is pain. And also,
it's like it's basically one episode. I do agree that it goes on too long, but it is, just for context, only an episode, roughly.
I think it's
still
more
like 23
than that.
minutes.
I think it's an episode and a half, but
maybe. I mean, there's a whole Segasha one that I remember, which is like well animated. But I'm pretty sure there was an Uchiyama one. I know that Super Saiyan 4 debuts in an Uchiyama episode, right? And he just like he screams. Nozawa screams on the side of a mountain, and it's one of the funniest
so
things.
Funny, it's sick.
And then they redo it again in the next episode, so it's kind of like dragged out a little bit that way. So like, I guess it's hard for me to separate like the presentation a bit from the narrative. I know that's two separate conversations. I think like the presentation of this was extremely cool, which we've not even touched on. I mean, the veins and like the fusing of like the energy that Neva's just instilled, like mixing with the stuff, and like the crazy fire and water visual motifs, like that stuff's extremely, extremely sick.
It is really cool, and I think I saw your video on it as well. You said that there was like parts of it that were even cut out where there were ideas of like sort of presenting the great ape like in the Shroud of Fire. So you would have the mix of the great ape of the fire mixing with the water of the demon world's magic and all that kind of stuff, creating this concoction for Super Saiyan 4. That would have been a really cool visual.
For anyone who hasn't seen my video, the context there is just that there's a sequence in the transformation where like a pillar of fire like shoots up into the air, and like the water sort of shrouds around it in the storyboard. That was going to like form like an Ozaru face that would sort of roar out towards the screen. That is not in the episode for some reason.
I do find that omission kind of really... Oh, what's my word? What's my word that I keep saying?
Perplexing.
I do find it kind of perplexing, though, right? Like, the whole premise of this is obviously that it's playing into the Great Ape stuff. How are we going to cut the one bit of the transformation that kind of, like, deals with that at all? That seems odd to me.
That's odd. And I my biggest fear is that like it will be a thing in like the next episode or something if it comes back, and I've accidentally like pointed it out. But yeah, I can't imagine that would be the case. Surely it's a weird omission for something that feels thematically very relevant.
Yeah, it would have been a really cool visual too. So
the visuals are so good. We're gonna harp on this more later, but my God, this episode is just gorgeous. Not even from a raw, like if you think about episode 8 where he fights Tamagami 3, that is a gorgeous episode in that just literally just the animation itself is fantastic. Obviously the compositing and storyboarding and layout and everything is great, but really the meat of that is in just the raw talent of the animators. That stays true here, but the direction and compositing in this episode as well, everything is just gorgeous. Like, every once in a while, I'll see somebody post online and remind people, like they'll post a cut from Daima and they'll be like, we're spoiled at this point, but you guys need to remember, this could be a movie. This is like movie level shit.
Yeah,
nowhere is it more true than this episode. This looks, not only does this look roughly as good as Broly, it looks miles better than anything. There is no 20 minutes, there's no 5 minutes in Battle of Gods or Resurrection F that looks as good as this episode, which is insane. This is a TV show.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It looks so good.
Absurd. Absolutely absurd. I mean, do we want to then move into the fight? Because I think, like, speaking of storyboarding, man, the way that this form is utilized is incredible. I think, like, one of the big things that both of you really loved, and I also loved, was the way that size was used in episode 8 with Tamagami 3. I immediately, while watching this, was like, I feel like surely Mark and Tyson have loved this because it comes back in such a big way.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the framing of a lot of the punches as well are so good. Like, the ones for the video viewers, the ones that I have up on screen, a lot of them even demonstrate that, where, like, Goku stops an attack. He's this tiny creature against this giant fist. He does a punch, and it's framed tightly so that Goku is normal size in the frame, and Goma is just filling out the rest of the screen just with his torso and face. Then later, Goku gets punched, and his fist alone fills up 80% of the screen. Like, the storyboard really, really pushes size as an aspect very well.
And to help separate Goma as well as like a villain fighting Goku amongst the other villains fighting who have fought Goku as well. This isn't just like hand-to-hand combat, as Goma takes control of the entire arena, seizing it with psychic ability and throwing it all at Goku, which facilitates the monkey aspect of the form, whereby he kind of runs up the walls, slides down them like Tarzan, walks and runs at his knuckles, hangs off different things using his tail. It's really just like a smorgasbord of different visual ideas that all lend to the design and the story of the fight as well, which is just it
AJ,
does help create its own identity.
Mm-hmm.
AJ, correct me if I'm wrong, but all of the Monkey Run stuff was from the same animator, correct?
Yeah. So this is the weirdest thing for me. The person who animated that scene of someone running was not only a viewer of myself, but also a viewer of Totally Not Mark.
Sure.
He when I was talking to him in DMs about his scene and gathering some information for my video, he said that it's kind of crazy for him because he was watching us when he was in I think he says 7th or 9th grade or something, and it's been so many years now, that he's now all grown up, developed so many skills, was really kind and said
that's
that,
really cool.
It really helped sort of ignite his passion, and so cool. And this
and that's my favorite part of the episode. Legitimately, that's my favorite part of the episode. That is so sick. That is so sick. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I think what's so wonderful about it as well is that that Monkey Run was not originally in the storyboard. It was something that him and the director cooked up together as an idea to really push the monkey aspect of that form. So it's just an insane international collaboration. It's so cool.
That's very cool. Yeah.
I
that's
asked
so
about this for a specific reason, which is that was also one of my favorite parts of the episode. I love pushing the monkey stuff and having him running around like that. We all agree. And I love it so much that knowing that it was from the mind of one person, basically, I really hope that's not the only time we see it because it's so good.
I really
it's extremely
hope cool
that future episode productions took from that in some way, and if ever again, and again, we don't know for sure if we will see adult Super Saiyan 4 Daima Goku. Maybe we won't. Actually, I think it's kind of likely we won't. But if we do, boy, do I hope that we see more of playing with that monkey type stuff because it's so cool and so fun.
Yeah,
it's great fun. Did I see the animator's name? I forget. The name was Anno, if I didn't. Yeah, it's wild that the majority of this episode was animated by Westerners. It's crazy.
Yep.
80% of the action is all from people from mostly Europe, France and Germany. There was a Mexican animator, someone from Switzerland. Yeah, big international gathering of people.
Jeez.
But in terms of the choreography, again, I think you touched on it well. That I don't know if you have a slide that shows this, but Goku using his tail to
hang off the arm
around Goma's arm was extremely cool. And I think what also made me think that you guys might have really loved this was that size is one thing. You've obviously shown that here with the scale, but it's also about how you use that size, where in the Tamagami 3 fight, he's running along Tamagami 3's arms, he's surfing the hammer, he's interacting,
zipping under him.
Yeah, he's interacting with the disparity of the scale. And that was the same thing here, where there are many scenes where he's running over Goma, using his body as a floor. There's lots of really cool stuff like that in this, and it was great to see that come back in such a big way. What an astonishing looking episode. I really can't emphasize just
so
how
gorgeous,
incredible this looked. Moving on from this then, I believe we then head into, I guess,
everybody else coming in.
Yeah, we get a big team up again as Goma just kind of tanks everything. Kind of wild. We've got Super Saiyan 4 is here, Tamagami 1 is here, Shin is here. Sorry, I want to pause here and just talk about something, okay? Let's roll back couple episodes to when we were fighting the mooks with guns.
My God.
Shin, coward, cowered behind Glorio, terrified for his life against some soldiers
I
with
know.
guns, jumps against the fucking final boss here with no hesitation at all. Doing better than Vegeta. Vegeta was not having a great time this episode.
Yeah,
I just
I'm
thought
glad
it was
you
so,
like said
so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah,
choose-
I'm glad you said that because like it's just the reason why that is one of the worst episodes of the series.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is I choose to solely lay the blame of that on that episode rather than the series as a whole.
yeah.
for
'Cause
sure.
I think other than the episode, the series as a whole has actually handled Shin pretty well. He's
Yeah.
gotten a good amount of action and kind of showcased who he is as a character and a fighter. It really just was that episode that it's like, what the fuck is going on, dude?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well,
I-
we won't labor on that too much, but
There's
Go on,
one
go on.
thing from this group fight sequence that I wanted to talk to you guys about. I don't even have a screenshot of it here for the video, but there's a bit where, for reasons I don't entirely understand, Glorio suddenly remembers that he's supposed to be a main character and like sees Goku powering up. He's like, yeah, I should power up. And then he powers up, and then him and Piccolo alone are like doing a beam clash against Goma.
I know.
Am I a
It's just-
curmudgeon, or was that just kind of silly?
That was really silly.
Okay.
Like, I mean, like, I just have no idea. Like, this entire section really was kind of like, now we do this. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, nothing of...
Now we're doing this.
Genuinely, it kind of goes back to what I talked about last week, where so far in this episode, there was a pretty solid, reasonable progression. Goku turns
Yeah.
Super Saiyan 3, he does pretty well, but then he needs help of everybody else, and they start pushing him back. Goma gets stronger. He beats Goku. Neva comes in, gives him a power-up. Okay, now he's pushing back. And then we get to this, where it's kind of the same thing. Now we've upped the ante further. Now, not only is it Super Saiyan 4 Goku, but it's everybody else. But nothing really changes. It's the exact same situation as when it was just Super Saiyan 4 Goku. So that on that front, that feels a bit pointless. And maybe kind of a low point of the episode. It's really not that long. It's not that big of a deal. But if we're analyzing it and talking about it, it's maybe not ideal. But specifically,
No,
the
far
bit
from
with
ideal.
Glorio really was one of the silliest and worst parts of this episode, I think, where I'm just like, what? Are you...
Yeah.
Did you remember you're supposed to be a main character? Okay, welcome
Yeah,
back to the
Piccolo-
party.
I definitely
Yeah.
think that's like quite emblematic of how Glorio as a character has kind of been treated, which is a real shame.
Largely
I
forgotten.
Yeah, which I think is maybe maybe the most relevant conversation for the end of this episode. So we'll save it for there. But I think what this does facilitate, or at least try to, I guess, land a little bit better is
The Kamehameha.
Yeah, the upside down one.
So good. Insane.
Yeah.
It up there with, and this is purposeful. You talked about this in your own video, but up there with the Kefla Kamehameha grind slide in terms of just like, earlier I said none of this is like standing ovation good. This Kamehameha is standing ovation good. It's so fucking sick.
Its build up is very good. It's like its execution isn't like what he does isn't like the fact that he does it upside down isn't the novel thing. Is the fact that it's delivered when we think he's done.
Yeah,
That kind of
because-
thing. Yeah,
it's not being
'Cause,
upside
like, I mean,
down. It's
I
like
think-
a
I think-
swivel attack. Like he gets
Yeah,
punched
I-
and
like,
he swivels around. And it's like, and
Yeah.
then on the swivel back, he's like, "Surprise, bitch!" Bam.
Yeah. I think comparing it to the Kefla thing is kind of like comparing apples to oranges, just if for no other reason than the Kefla thing was kind of like amazing for me at least because it was leveraging an aspect of the mechanics of beams that hadn't been done before really in that way. Whereas this is sort of like choreographically speaking, it's very strong. I think I would just there are very few instances in the series where a Kamehameha is as good as the one where they did it against Kefla. Like the story wasn't as strong, but like the actual technique and execution was amazing. It's like there are maybe like 2 or 3 Kamehamehas in the entire series, the one with Kefla included, that I would like have in that kind of like echelon, and that being the Kamehameha with the feet, the Kamehameha against Kefla, and maybe Goku's like standing, like, underwater Kamehamehas to Frieza. Those are like some of my favorites. I will say though that this one is really, really cool. It's just like, I would probably maybe have it as like my third favorite Kamehameha of the series.
I think the delineation I would make here is, I think what you're outlining are the most creative Kamehamehas, which
right, but that's kind of why I liked the Kefla transfer. That's why I like the Kefla one, though, you see.
Well, it's a little bit of multiple things, because the Kefla Kamehameha is really creative, but it's also executed really well and has really great gravitas. I would not put I think the foot Kamehameha and the underwater Frieza Kamehameha are really creative and awesome, but I would not put them in the same conversation as, say, like Goku versus Vegeta in the Saiyan thing, where that isn't necessarily creative. It's just like a beam struggle. Though, to be fair, at the time, that was a little bit less treading of ground. But
I mean, like, if you want me to talk about, like, the gravitas ones, I wasn't talking gravitas, really. This one has really strong gravitas, like the Warp Kamehameha or like the... those kind of ones.
It's like a big... There are plenty of... Because one of the things that we've praised unanimously and unwaveringly in Daima is how they've handled Kamehamehas. They got a lot of respect in that. Kamehameha that is not fantastic in the series, and I think there's a lot of elements to what makes a moment like that good. There is the creativity of the situation, the situational aspect. There is the execution of it on like a directorial and gravitas standpoint, and then there's other smaller things like its narrative context and its its animation execution and all that jazz. I think this Kamehameha in this episode fires on all of those cylinders at a minimum really well. I don't.
Oh, it does.
If we're doing like a graph of like the stats of a Kamehameha, I think the creativity stats of the Kefla one are definitely higher than this. But I think across the board, the overall stats of this, I would put personally above the Kefla one, which is saying something because the Kefla Kamehameha is so good. But this is just amazing.
This is the most passionate I've ever heard you. Is this a top one moment in Daima for you?
2. I think this is number 2 for me. Okay. Unfortunately for you, episode 8, its entire fight still cannot be topped. I don't.
Yeah, same.
There is never in all of modern Daima been a period of or an action sequence that has more engaged me than episode 8. I felt like an actual kid again.
The only reason I would say though is this fight has like plenty of the elements of the episode 8 fight that I liked. It's just missing the narrative gravitas that I was like really into. Again, it all boils down to and cannot be separated from the fact that Goma is mid as fuck, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and to be clear, this moment, this Kamehameha looks better than anything in episode 8, which is saying something because episode 8 looks amazing. I'm just talking the whole package. But to your point, I know you're upset that I wouldn't put it number 1. I think this is number 2 for me. I think this is probably the second
I would
best
say
thing
number
in
2
all
as
of
well.
Daima for me.
Yeah.
I'm not upset.
It is standing ovation good.
Continue to be completely baffled by your connection to Tamagami 3, but that's fine. That's what opinions are for. But yeah, this was an extremely cool moment, and one of those moments that was also elevated by the animator himself. Throwing in his own ideas, like the close-ups of the hands and all the debris that's in there. It was incredible stuff. I think I prefer it maybe to the Kefla one, if only because I think the surprise element of it really got me. Like, obviously, him grinding
the Kefla one didn't surprise you.
No. Let me clarify.
Okay.
Him grinding along a beam is cool and is surprising because we've not seen it before. Mm-hmm. But I think in this, it was like, it felt so much like, okay, he's fucked. And we've just seen a Kamehameha build up interrupted.
I think I was really entertained by the creative aspect of that. We've never really seen a big climactic Kamehameha just completely get interrupted.
Yeah, it's breaking the shonen rules. You're not allowed to interrupt people when they're charging up. Come on, Gomar, that's not okay. But yeah, for him to like get completely knocked out and for like that light to slightly emerge from behind him and then he turns and fires it. Like to me, that was like, oh wow, okay, so this is incredible stuff.
True.
So yeah, that's good stuff.
Was it better than the hamster episode?
Yeah, this is. This is on a different level to the hamster episode.
Okay,
can you believe it? Can you believe it?
Unless we have in the record, it's important.
Does that mean I get to be turned into a monkey on the screen now?
No.
Oh,
Everybody likes this one.
Yeah,
that's fine. That's fine. I am correct in thinking Cell Max time, right?
Yeah. The eye returns again to bullshit no Jitsu, some additional power.
And also erase Super Saiyan 4, which was just an interesting choice.
I actually kind of like that. And I almost wish that we got more of that throughout the fight. Because, like...
Not just magic, his magic taking over Neva's magic.
Well, not even him versus Neva necessarily, but just like... The Tertian Oculus, it's this magic thing. It's like in the Boo area of like, it's strong because it's magic. And I don't think it making him strong is a bad thing. We already talked about that. I have no problem with it. But I do, especially seeing this really made me wish that we got even more of the magic aspect of Goma's strength rather than just him being strong. Obviously we get him like shooting around, like telekinesising shit around with magic like that's there, but something like this made me wish we got even more of this, almost like a fucking like I don't know, like a Doctor Strange fight where it's them going up against this guy who fights completely different and like the threat that he poses is completely different to anything else that they've faced before. Seeing this I thought was really cool personally.
I've come to a incredible realization. This is a battle of magic. It's Gomar's magic with the eye and Neva's magic, which I think makes Goku Neva's stand.
No, it makes him his Pokemon.
Yeah, Goku, like Neva's having a proxy war with fucking Goma right now, and Goku's his proxy. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Oh man, yeah.
Well, until now, in which case he just kind of like bullshit no jutsu just yeets the form away from, which what I'm fine with, easy come easy go, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean Gomar getting so big like this, especially next to what we'll touch on with Glorio, almost feels like someone waving a banner going, okay, we sized Gomar up, main character's next, like anyone else make sense.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean,
it also kind of like if they do size up and age up or whatever in the next episode, which I mean, I think largely everyone thinks that's going to happen, but it's just another instance of just them being able to have their cake and eat it too, whereby they're able to lean into like, oh, they're so much smaller compared to them without like needing to worry about the fact that they're older now.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think the removing of the forms like this is a really cool idea. And I'm curious to see whether that will factor in at all going forwards, because like that's so mechanically interesting. Like what is happening?
Yeah, I think it's
like
cool.
It's so it's crazy stuff.
It is like utter bullshit. It's like, but I find it personally to be interesting bullshit, and I'm not offended by it because it's just playing into like the magic stuff. Why? What?
Well, no, I mean, like, it's fine that you think, like, I personally think it's fine. It's inoffensive to me. It just doesn't add anything to me. Like, I mean, it's obviously like, we're having like, the magic gave Goku this power, the magic taketh it away. In that capacity, I guess it's kind of like, it could be seen as thematically interesting if you want to think of it that way. It kind of leaning into like, the fact that Goku always wants to get something on his own, and because he does things that way, this sort of thing can never happen to him. But like in terms of like how it makes me feel about the fight, like it doesn't make me feel any more or less hyped for it than I already was. So I'm just kind of wondering why you thought it was interesting. Does it add more? Does this add something to the fight for you?
Well, I think it does because it's a big question mark now. It's like, well, hold on. These transformations are what we're giving them the edge, and Goma has just crushed that. So how do you counter that? What is the next step to being able to overcome what is an insane move that, had you placed this in many other moments in the series, would be devastating. I think that in and of itself is really, really interesting.
Yeah, do you think that Piccolo's got to use the Mafu bar or something against them or something?
I could see that.
No,
I could definitely see that.
I think they're good. No, I think, and just to reiterate and be clear, this is still bullshit. Like, I will never be a fan, and this kind of ties into why, even if I'm fine with the Tertian Oculus, it's not as engaging as other, previous villains and threats. But I will never find it as engaging where the progression, like the turn of events of a fight is, oh, I didn't know I can do this. Like, oh, I didn't do this before. I didn't know. Like, it comes from nowhere. So it is bullshit. But it is at least, contextually that is excused to some degree by it, it's magic. It's Tertian Oculus magic stuff. And I do think it adds to this fight, like AJ said, just contextually and structurally, in that, like, well, just like what I said before, now it's not just, oh, the Tertian Oculus made him strong. He can punch real hard. It's like, oh, not only is he strong, but he has fucking, like, magic hacks. Like, it adds an additional wrinkle to the fight that I find interesting.
I suppose the jury's out for me, like, whether or not that's a good or a bad thing, because, like...
Oh, yeah. It'll depend on how they do it forward.
It'll depend on how they resolve this, because he's got magic hacks. That is going to be true all the time.
Yeah.
So are we, like, is his defeat going to be hinging entirely on his own incompetence? In which case, that's kind of, like, less interesting to me. Like, see, the problem with having a character that has, like, this incredibly broken power like this is that it'll necessarily need to have some other way to be overcome. Like, like Goku and Co aren't going to lose this. Like, we know this going in realistically.
I don't think there's any reason to assume that the solve for that will be something as bland as what you're suggesting. We don't know.
No, I hope it's not. I'm just saying that, like, because, like, when you have, like, such... but, like, when you have, like, something as impossibly and immeasurably powerful as this, something that can literally drain your enemies of, like, their, like, fighting power, it kind of makes you question... what can, like, be done here, and, like, not in, like, a way that for me kind of, like, drives interest, but, like, sort of, like, I kind of like, I want to hedge everything that I'm saying, and that I hope this is resolved in a way that's satisfying. It's just because the power is so over the top, I can't envision not that I can't envision, I worry that it won't be resolved in a satisfying way.
I agree. And I also 100% agree with the general notion that this moment, it's me finding it cool, depends heavily on what happens next episode and the episode after.
Yeah. Me too.
So there's a lot of missing context that we have. But I was just speaking as it exists right now in this moment in time. And as it exists in this moment in time right now, I thought it was cool, and I kind of wish that there was more of it throughout the fight.
I agree. I think the magic aspects are the most interesting part of the eye, both this and the way that Gomar was fighting in the last episode by, like, moving rocks around to, like, block moves and stuff was very cool. I definitely think that was an aspect that was slightly missing. But to move into the next part of this episode, I think we're about to be really miserable.
Yeah, we're gonna pivot tone a little bit, surely.
Yeah. I think by and large, we agree that this was a fantastic episode, but this this for me was a real low point of not just this episode, but Daima as a whole.
The series. This is
truly
you know what?
Perplexing.
I was pretty low on this.
Yep, I said the word. Let me introduce this real quick for people who can't see the screen. This is the moment where Glorio starts having his, the friends we made along the way. What do we do?
I will say that I was kind of like,
Arinsu, it's like, come, bring me the balls. And, off he goes, having his thought about the adventures
Thinking
we had.
about the adventures. Yeah.
Well, I think we all knew that this was inevitably going to happen, but
Yeah.
I had a pretty negative sort of feeling with it when it happened. But when that interview dropped, and like, you know, the purpose behind the actual series was to have like Dragon Ball fans share this with their children, have that sort of shared experience. I think everyone has their first moment where like they have, and you know, experience a character going through this sort of like emotional sort of moral dilemma. And I think this is perfectly fine to have it here. I mean, like, if I had never seen this stereotype in fiction before, I wouldn't have been like thinking too critically about.
Let me interrupt for a second to clarify that, like, my issue is not that it's trite,
The trope
and unoriginal.
itself. Yeah.
Like the trope is fine. That's not the issue for me. For me, it's that like this should work as a set piece. That Glorio's moment of truth comes in the midst of battle. You know, it's what I was hoping for when we were talking last week. But as we've also discussed many times, Glorio as a character vanished.
He vanished for like half the series. Yeah,
we've never had any moment of sincerely believing him to be any kind of threat, to be sincerely on Arinsu's side in any way. As we said, we've never even really bought Arinsu as a villain, so for them to try and do this now, it's like, well, this now has no weight at all.
Yeah.
It's just missing the foundation that this trope works on. Like, I agree, the trope itself is not a problem for me. I do also agree with Mark that, I think having a trope as simplistic as this, even if you do have a problem with that trope, is fine because, like we said, the context of what this is for, I think, helps. But the way this is executed is missing, like, fundamental pillars of how that trope works. Like, you can't do this without, establishing him as somebody who really was on the other side and like genuinely was going to be a threat and aggressor. I'm sorry, him periodically having Discord calls with Dr. Arinsu is not that.
No, or the camera zooming on his eye for half a second. As he slightly grimaces.
Also the perplexing kind of comment he had where he didn't feel like he was privy to any of the plans that Arinsu had with regards to was it Do and Ku. Like, that's just kind of forgotten.
Further undermines it. And it's also missing the fundamental pillar of showing that he is developing a relationship and feelings with these characters and their adventures along the way. It
doesn't really feel like they're friends.
Really. The closest thing we ever had to that was in the hotel. With
Pansy, and that's pretty much it. That's the only time we've ever really seen any major growing camaraderie. They do show him sparring with Goku, which is like a moment, but it's just, there just isn't enough. We're missing fundamental
and also, like,
pillars for this trope to hit.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone else is kind of feeling this as well, but like, because he's such a guarded character and has been throughout the entire series, he kind of feels one note as well. There was no moment where where I felt like he really came out of his shell with the crew either.
No.
And so it was like there was no like moment where like Vegeta really got under his nerves, or Pansy, like, you know, he showed like, you know, deep, you know, like fear for her safety, or, you know, there was no kind of moment of like, looking back on it thinking like, oh, well, that was weird. But like it was all very just like I mean, like the way that he was introduced in the series is sort of the way that he was like 5 episodes ago. It felt largely at least.
I am going to go into something that I have generally disliked and discouraged throughout this podcast, which is theorizing and setting some expectations going forward of what I would like, which is, I'm thinking about how this could be less stupid. And I think it could maybe be less stupid if in these following final 2 episodes, we finally get the reveal of why he's working with Dr. Arinsu. And what comes of that is, you know, he has some motivating factor where something was bad and he wants his life or the life of someone he cares about or whatever to be good. And Dr. Arinsu was his best bet at achieving that. And what he's realizing here is not, the friends we made along the way, I really care about them, but rather it's him realizing, actually, Goku is my best bet to achieving this goal, this like betterment of my life that got me teamed up with Dr. Aransu in the first place. I think if it went down that way, that would not only retroactively make Glorio's entire character a little bit less boring, but it would specifically make this moment a lot less stupid, I think. Because now, all of these flashbacks, because a lot of them are like, because they spent so little fucking time together, most of the flashbacks are just like seeing Goku do shit and be strong. And so I think that would be way less stupid if the actual context is him realizing, oh, I bet on the wrong horse. And so now he's swapping horses. I think that could be way cooler and certainly way less stupid.
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly help it, and I think we surely have to get a motivation. So, I mean, like, this episode reveals like a connection to Aransu even greater than I think we even thought, where it's like, you know, oh, that's why I had you learn the Namekian language. Like, oh, okay, you made him learn a whole language. Okay, fine. There's a lot going on there, but Glorio has just been a background character for so long. I think
after being so prevalent as well, like early on, it was just it's such a bizarre shift.
All of our conversations early in this series were dominated by what the fuck is Glorio doing? What is his reason for even being? Like, what is happening with this guy? Like, that was a reasonably interesting mystery for a little bit. And then nothing ever came of it. And I don't think he even really had any contact with Aransu for a long, long time. He had one in the hamster episode.
Famously.
But otherwise, just not a lot of it. Not a lot to ever really sell him as someone actively against the gang. And so
what I kind of reeked of was just that they had a story for Glorio that they didn't or couldn't think of a way to fit naturally into the episodes that they had. So they front loaded it and then just had him coast until it was ready for a story to be picked up.
To pay off.
Just picked back.
Yeah.
Quote
and like,
unquote,
which is a shame because, like, you know, there are better ways of going about that. You need to keep him, you know, prevalent in our minds rather than just like, hey, remember this guy? He's doing a thing now. Time to watch him do the thing. You know, just it's just a bit like
Yeah, it's a shame. But I suppose we'll see. The Purunga summoning itself, pretty damn cool.
The Purunga sequence, unironically, his big reveal, that might be one of my favorite moments of the series, just because like I really like how like the detail of when he's kind of coming out, the camera kind of like falls down his back around him, the big 360 shot. There's like, it almost looks like you almost get an idea of what he feels like, and the scale of it as well is really communicated better than any other kind of like unveiling of a dragon that I've ever seen. So like it's one of those moments that I really liked. In terms of the design itself, it's just it's whatever. It's like
Red Purunga. Yeah,
it's Red Purunga.
I can certainly see that with the staging of it. Like, it's
the
very
staging
well animated.
is really cool.
It is huge for sure.
Yeah.
But it is certainly Purunga, but red.
That's kind of what the red. That's kind of GT as well, though. No?
It is straight out of GT. So. It's just red Shenlong.
I'm in the middle here. I don't have a problem with red Purunga because that's just what the GT dragon was. It was just red Shenlong.
Yeah.
But I'm very surprised that you would call this one of your favorite things in the entire series, because for me it was just fine.
I didn't mean. Okay, if I said the entire series, I didn't mean to say the entire series. What I said was, okay. Well, what I mean is that it's one of my favorite moments from the episode where I was like, oh wow, this thing is fucking huge and it's really cool looking. That's kind of what I meant.
That's a little less perplexing. I still find that a little surprising, but significantly less surprising than it being one of your favorite things in the whole series. So that makes a little bit more sense.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's funny that you're like super okay with it just being Purunga. I mean, I get it. It's following, you know, what we got from GT. But I think in an era where Dragon Ball has had a lot of really cool dragon stuff, just the standard dragon, a little bit dull. Obviously, it has its connection to Namek, so you know, fine, makes sense. But you know, it was kind of cool to see like Super Shenlong and there was one in the manga, right? That was like kind of fishy looking,
in
right?
Planet Cereal.
Did they change the actual like the audio for the Wish? From what you thought it was, Tyson, that there was going to be some kind of new dragon.
Yes, they do. So let me rewind for
trailer.
context a little bit.
Yeah.
In the reveal trailer, one of the main things is we get Neva doing a Namekian chant, and it's like Taparaka, Pito, blah, blah, whatever, Totorombo, something, something. So basically, it was the exact same spell, chant, whatever, as every other dragon summoning. So the same as Shenlong and the same as Purunga, or at least Purunga. I'm not sure if it was the same as Shenlong. So at the time, we theorized, okay, we're going to be getting a new dragon whose name is Torombo, I think was what we guessed, or something.
Dodorusi or something, wasn't it?
Dodorusi, that's right. But we already kind of had that revealed that was going to be the case, Mark, because that is the spell that he casts when he opens the portal between worlds.
Okay, yeah.
So
that should have been Piccolo. That should have been Piccolo.
True. Yeah, so he does
die
that
on that
spell
hill.
then, and the spell / chant that he does for this is just the exact same as on Namek. It's just the same line, but with Poparunga instead of Totorombo.
Sure.
But no, yeah, I mean, AJ, I agree. I would have preferred if it was a new
I would
design.
have preferred, yeah.
But given that it isn't that, in isolation, I'm not upset with it being just red Shenlongs because
It's
I get
fine.
the intent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It fits. It's fine. Could have been better, but, whatever. It is what it is.
Dragon Ball Daima.
The Wish.
Yeah.
Aritsu once again reiterates, she wants to be the Demon King with the strongest magical power in all the realms. What do we think Gloria wished for here?
Well, it's got to be I don't. Is there anyone that thinks it's going to be anything else?
No.
Realistically,
I don't think so.
No.
Bring them back to adults. It's as clear as day. I mean, it might even be coincidence, but the subtitle basically has child up written in it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's literally spelling it out for you.
Yeah.
I don't know that we really have much to add to that, and the next episode preview shows quite literally nothing. So what do we do?
I mean, it's just they're gonna be adults. No, it's the reason they can't show anything other than these 5 seconds, because you would show them as adults.
I agree. We must rate the episode. I'm going to go first. I don't normally, but I'm going to go first. I would probably give this, for me, a solid, I would say it's probably a 9.5 for me. It is almost Daima at its best. It is Daima at its best for me.
Now, Mark, just to go back a bit, that does mean that AJ thinks this is exactly as good as the hamster episode.
Well, look, I'll knock the hamster down by half a point. Fine. Jesus Christ. For me, this was the best Daima episode yet. Not just because, cool hype form and stuff, but it just feels like it, putting aside all of the criticisms that we've outlined about why many of these things obviously don't work because of the faults of so much of the show, it feels like it's an episode that is at least trying to capitalize on the concepts that it thinks it has established, if that makes sense. And I think that, for me, made it very, very enjoyable. I'm not going to be extremely pretentious and pretend that a fucking cool new form and a bunch of action doesn't, tickle the meathead part of my brain. I'll hold my hands up to that. That shit was fucking awesome. But, the production that was put together, the concepts that it was trying to execute, great stuff. I can't really fault it beyond the stuff that we've discussed so far. In the context of Daima, it is right up there. Obviously, if I was weighing this up against, all of Dragon Ball, the score would be infinitely lower, but we don't do that, so I think it's
That's
important.
kind of what I've been doing.
I do
though.
that. Yeah.
I do that.
You're the only one that doesn't do that.
Yeah, you're see, I don't know why you're deciding to grade it on a curve.
Yeah.
Because, it's very difficult for me to take out and divorce the story and my enjoyment of it from the rating of the episode. Me giving this a 9.5 would mean that, to me, a great story is only worth an extra 0.5, which just can't be the case for me.
Well,
so that's where,
Because for me, when we're judging episodes, going episode by episode, I feel it only makes sense to judge it within the context of the show. When I rate the show as a whole, I'm then weighing it up against all of these many different components of Dragon Ball, at which point the overall score will of course be significantly lower. But I feel like it makes the most sense if you're going episode by episode to think about how does this function against all of the other episodes of this series.
I mean, I agree with that in terms of like talking about it and discussing it, but in terms of rating it or how you feel about it, to me that's the same thing as watching a like middle of the road MCU movie that is a like 6 out of 10, but people are like, oh, well, for an MCU movie, this is actually like a 9 out of 10. This is a pretty good MCU movie. Like,
but I think that's completely
I just don't
valid.
like
things have
that's
very
fine.
different intentions. Like I can give you a perfect example of this, right? Something like Smile 2, right, is a very good horror
Don't spoil
movie.
it. I haven't seen it.
I won't say a single spoiler. You know me. Something like Smile 2 is a very, very, very good film. But it's a very, very good film that wants to be a fun, popcorn, exciting Friday night thriller. It's that type of film, and I have to judge it by that context. And so, you know, I could give that like a 4 out of 5 or something. But if I'm looking at something that is trying to be very cerebral, is trying to execute very complex themes, I just wouldn't be able to judge it in the same way. It has very different achievements. And so that's why I like to differentiate between these different things. I think it's important to take the context of what we're talking about into account.
Just to be clear for me, it's very difficult, nigh impossible, for me to differentiate this from what preceded it, purely because everything that happens in this story is informed by all of the events of Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball. Like this, the types of attacks that are used, to the tropes of the characters, to their journeys that they're on in this show. It's all built in the back of that. Now, if you want to look at it in isolation, you can do that. It's your prerogative, absolutely. But like, it's difficult for me. Like I said, like it's one of those things where like if I want to judge it based on like a curve, based on like, you know, this in isolation, this series, I can do that. And I can give it a higher score, but I don't think that will communicate effectively how I enjoyed the episode, if for no other reason than like giving it a 9 out of 10 wouldn't really feel true to it, because it's just, the story wasn't there for me like it would have been earlier in the series. So I don't know.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with Mark in that I don't think this coming after Boo, I keep saying this, I don't think that really matters to me personally. I don't think, like, you know, Superhero is in the same continuity, but I think it's trying to do very different things than something like Broly. And so I understand, and I agree with your general idea, AJ, that like different pieces of fiction can be trying to do different things. Like, there's a fundamental difference between what Smile 2 is trying to do and what the Zucker Brothers movie Airplane is trying to do. So, yeah, there is an apples and oranges kind of thing when you're comparing any two pieces of fiction. I just don't, like, the thing that I'm rejecting is grading on a curve rather than just understanding that, like, your grading of something is reliant on, or it just is based upon the fact of how well is the thing that this piece of fiction trying to do, like, executing on the thing that it's trying to do. Like, yes, MCU movies and Dragon Ball are trying to do two different things, but that doesn't mean, like, they're just two separate concepts to me. Just because the MCU is a different thing doesn't mean that I'm going to watch a 6 out of 10 movie from there and say it's an 8 out of 10, grading against the curve of other MCU movies.
Right, but I just find that very unproductive. I feel like if I was doing that, I would sit here for this entire podcast every week rating this with abysmal scores. Because
I'm going to be honest with you, AJ, and I'm being completely serious. What you're describing is why I always say I don't like most anime. Because what you're describing is how I view media. Like, that is why I struggle with a lot of anime. It's because, like, I'm not grading on a curve. I, like, watch, you know, some anime, like, whatever, and, like, the dialogue is bad, and I get some people are like, oh, well, for anime, it's fine for dialogue. But for me, they are inseparable. The dialogue in this being bad means that that is worse.
I think before we move on to end to like, you know, like the questions and stuff, I will say that, like, I think an important part to remember is that, yeah, you can, even if you do look at Daima for what it's trying to do and all that kind of stuff, I still think the story on itself fails to capture some sort of like the kind of tension that it could have. Like I don't find
That's
Goma.
why I differentiate the overall score. The overall score would be very well. You'll probably find out would be quite not high.
Right, but that's kind of like, I don't see how this episode would do particularly well because it suffers from all the problems with it.
In isolation, it is a well-executed, exciting piece of spectacle. It is something that doesn't work in the... Like, look, let me use
but
the
it's
hamster
not in
episode
isolation.
as
No man is an island.
let me use the hamster episode as an example, right? The reason I rated that so highly, and as I explained at the time, is that for me, it executes so many concepts that I really wanted from Daima. Its placement within the show is very bad and shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And so I find it unfair to start rating things like that. I think like it makes so much
I haven't
more
started.
sense.
I've always done that, to be fair.
I don't think this isn't
inconsistent.
It's unfair in the slightest, but I don't know. Like, to me, that would be like saying episode 130 of Dragon Ball Super is a 10 out of 10 piece of fiction as long as you don't pay attention to episodes 1 through 129 and 131. Like,
no, but I think it's
that's not
completely
the
fair to say
context
that
through which you're watching the episode.
I think you can very easily have a nuanced take that something like 130 and 131 are really exciting episodes that deliver all of the, like, it delivers a cool ending, it delivers cool action, blah, 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 but it's part of an arc that is quite shit, and I'm not emotionally invested in this stuff. And so, you know, in the context of the series, that arc is now not very good. It has some cool moments that could have been better if the rest of the arc was better. Like, I just think it would be unfair to look at really well executed stuff and just start giving it piss poor scores because everything around it is bad too, you know?
I just think you're unnecessarily segmenting. It's not executed well across the board.
So I just need to just say one thing, and this is why I can't differentiate it, is that my enjoyment of this particular episode is directly tied to the episodes that preceded it in the story.
Yeah, the narrative.
And so I can look at if you want me to delineate the animation and action in isolation, yeah, 10 out of 10, brilliant. I loved it. It was it's a great feast for the eyes. But if I want to turn my brain back on and like digest the story for what it's trying to achieve, I don't think it does a very good job of it.
I would go in the other direction. I think it's unfair to grade individual pieces of fiction on a curve, isolating only very specific elements. Like
that, I reject that. I reject the idea that I'm turning my brain off because I despise that as a criticism.
I'm not saying you're turning your brain off.
Yeah.
That was
Mark. Well, that's what Mark just said.
Well, I know,
but
Mark.
like I was being hyperbolic. I don't think that's what you're doing, but like I would need to do that if I were to achieve what you're doing. That's not necessarily saying that what you're doing is that. It's just that I'm just, you know, I can't think of this as anything other than just a failure to deliver a particular emotional feeling or sense of tension. But all that aside, the action is incredible, 10 out of 10, feast of the eye spectacle. And that's what this episode is in totality for me.
I don't even think it's an outright failure on that front, but I do think it's not rock steady on that front. And for that reason, that's why, even if I think that the action and spectacle of this episode is fantastic, I think my overall rating for the episode could never be something like a 9.5 because there are other elements, important elements, foundational elements of this piece of fiction that are not firing on all cylinders like that. Those elements are.
Right, but I think for me, this is why singular episode ratings exist and why series episode ratings exist. Because I look at something like the Glorio moment and I'm like, okay, this is framed really well. So much consideration has gone into how this is being put forth right now. I think this is great stuff, but it's all predicated on stuff that doesn't exist beforehand, and so that falls flat, and that's fine. I factor that in for sure, but that to me is something that's much more relevant to an overall series rating, where I'm like, okay, well, look, you know, they attempted to execute this well, and had there been substantial build up to that, could have worked. But boom.
I think that's the best example of why what you're saying doesn't work. I think what you're saying is true. When we got to the bit where Glorio considers his friends he made along the way, you had been singing its praises, because who cares about the context of the whole series? It was executed well in this episode. It was framed well. I will say that storyboarded well. Get what it was drawn well. So it shouldn't have been before.
Just to put a pin on this, because I don't think we're going to agree, but I do think I agree with what AJ is driving at. I will just say that when I'm giving my rating, I'm giving it based on how the episode made me feel, and that rating cannot be divorced from how the entire series has made me feel, because that episode necessarily is informed by the rest. I can understand your approach, though, and that you try to look at it in isolation, and that's fair. It's just not what we're doing.
No, okay. What is my rating? I guess overall, I would give this episode a solid 8.8, maybe even an 8.9. The spectacle and action of this is just that good. Oh, I will say 8.8, 8.9. If the Kamehameha moment wasn't here, knock at least half a whole point, if not a whole point off. That it really is a major part of why I enjoy this episode. That Kamehameha moment, much like the Kefla beam slide thing, that moment is what is going to make me boot this episode back up in the future. And I will, because I want to see it again.
Cannot believe we just bickered so fucking hard over barely half a point of difference. Jesus Christ.
Well, Mark's might be lower than mine.
Go on.
Mine? 8. Yeah, I feel 7.9, 8, 8.1. Yeah, okay. Around there.
See, AJ, that's 2.5 points of difference.
No, it's not. That's a 1.5 point difference.
Or 1.5 point difference. Yeah. Everybody's like, oh, Tyson did all this complaining just to give it an 8.9. How many times do I have to reiterate? We're analyzing the series. I've said 30 million times this episode that I thought it was a good episode.
Guys, number scores are stupid. Let's just go to viewer questions. Come on.
I will start with the first one from Unscathed Art, who says Furry Ball Daima. That also is the entire super chat.
Yep. That's
it sure is bringing in emphasizing.
How many of these are going to be allusions to Super Saiyan 4?
Hold on. Does a monkey count as a furry?
Surely.
Why wouldn't it?
Well, I always figured furries were like canine stuff, they're or cats and shit. I never really considered a monkey being a furry.
I'm in the furry subreddit right now. Thread. Are primates considered furries?
The speed at which you Google that is insane.
Well, it's 2 words. It's pretty quick.
A furry is just like an animal. It's monkey's an animal.
Sure. I just thought it was
no. Yeah. That's not true, because scaly, reptiles are animals, but they're called scalies, not furries.
Yeah, okay. People in chat a monkey has a fur. I know it has fur, but it seemed different. Okay.
For what it's worth, the furry community on the furry subreddit
what would you call
think that monkeys are indeed capable of being furries. So that answers your question.
I mean, but if they are called different things based on what they are, what are rhinos and hippopotamus and elephants? Are they just skinnies? Heidies?
I think you would need to find a community of people that's doing that, but
yeah.
Man.
Look, you're going to be ruining my Google search results the more we talk about this.
Yeah, let's not. Next question.
The next super chat is from Nerdy Norwegian, who says, This was my favorite Daima episode, with 2 great returns from an older era, Super Saiyan 4 and the Great Yamamuro.
True facts.
The one thing this episode missed for me was an insert song. What would you guys have wanted to hear? Great super chat. Thank you.
I would have really wanted to hear
Papa Roach cut my life into pieces.
Well, that would have been cool. I would have liked some Crash Bandicoot jungle music or something too.
Somebody just mix in the Gear 5 soundtrack. I feel like that's kind of jungly and animalistic.
Yeah. Drums of Liberation or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
You've allowed Mark to talk about Crash Bandicoot. Look what you've done.
Yeah, I did feel slightly concerned as soon as I said it. Like, oh, what have I started?
Yeah.
Great game, like I said.
I do. I mean, so to answer the super chat, I do think that an insert song would have been nice, but it just kind of goes back to what I keep saying, which is, man, am I bummed about the music in this series. It's like top 2, maybe top 1 biggest bummers of this series for me. I don't know what I would have wanted from it, though. I don't know. I would want Sumitomo. That's what I would want, actually. Jen and Sofa Pod submits. They say, "Hola, gents. Do you believe that this Super Saiyan 4 form will be referred to or done again down the road in the future of Super's manga? Maybe as a possible way to defeat Black Frieza?"
I don't know, because I feel like I think we're all in agreement that next week's episode will probably be them coming back as like adults.
Mm-hmm.
If Goku still has access to like Super Saiyan 4 the same way that he has access to like regular base God or whatever you want to call it, that would raise a lot of questions for why he hasn't used it at all in the series. So one would assume then that he can't use it, and if that's the case, it would need some kind of magical trigger the same way that Neva gave it. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. I think because like if people really liked it and all that kind of jazz, then I can imagine them bringing it in. It'll depend on its popularity. That's my take.
I wouldn't be surprised if Toyotaro brought it back. Seems like the kind of thing he would like. Also, he's also someone who really likes to like reconcile lore stuff. So, if there are loads of inconsistencies, there are inconsistencies. That seems like the kind of thing he would love to fill in. But yeah, I don't know. I'm also really curious to see if whether they actually like call it Super Saiyan 4. Obviously, it's
definitely
Super Saiyan 4,
not
like, in the production materials, but I think it will probably have like a crazy ass different name.
As far as will it get used later in the series, I think that will come down partially to its popularity and partially just to how they, like what we see in the next few episodes, like how do they reconcile this transformation itself. That's really what I think it'll boil down to, is that. And so we'll just have to wait and see, right? The next one is from Unscathed Dart again, who says, What would you all like to see happen in the last 2 episodes? I'd love to know not what you think will happen, but what you'd like to happen.
One thing I keep harping on ever since we got that super chat about it was that I would love the fusion bugs to not actually have anything to do with fusion for like the main characters in action, but rather just fuse Kaioshin and Kibito again. I think that would be a fun use of that. Yeah, I don't think that will actually happen, funny. But that would be cool. I think this is a mean one because I think it would be funny, but I would love for like a random cameo of Beerus and Whis just to like really throw a spanner in the works. That would be exceptionally funny. Or I forget who even conjured this up, but someone was like, what if this whole adventure is just Beerus's dream about the Super Saiyan God? Because they have the like similar hair color and eye color.
That would be funny.
That would be very funny. So answering this question is exceptionally hard. Because a lot of the there's not really much. The way that I envision the next 2 episodes will be they will deal with Goma fairly intensely again, but as adults in this next episode, so they'll be largely fighting, and then the last episode will be spent either finishing him off or just tidying up the details at the end. And to be honest, I'm actually looking forward more to the last episode than I am next week's episode, just because I like the idea of getting to see and touch base with more characters again. I thought the first few episodes were very strong in that regard. What would I like to see? I still would have liked to have seen Kid Gohan again, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. So yeah,
I'm a big Gohan fan, and I still am not really concerned about if Gohan is here. So
I'm not concerned about it. I just think it would be kind of cute. It'd be nifty.
What now?
Because like realistically, what I want are like things that are more integral to the story or whatever to take place. But like, but like that's not possible.
I remember the thing I want. I say remembered. Rather, I read something in the chat that made me think of something that I want. Someone said, I bet we get a 3-minute montage of the conclusion, blah, 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 blah. GT ended with a really sick nostalgic montage of things.
That's good. That's a good one. Yeah.
Love for this series to end with some kind of montage.
And make sure they use Dan.
One thing I also noticed was that Daima airs on Friday nights, right? And it ticks over into midnight, into the next day. And the final episode is on February 28th, which will tick over onto March 1st, which is the 1-year anniversary of Toriyama's death. So I would not be surprised if, they maybe did something there.
Yeah.
My only worry with that is that they wouldn't have an appropriately nostalgic song. They'd probably have to use like a song that isn't in Daima, like something like
Makafuji Adventure. That's it.
Yeah, or like Chala or something. Yeah, just something.
Nah, the whole series is them being kids again. You gotta use Makafuji Adventure. Also, otherwise you'll have people complaining that Chala is overused, and I don't want to hear it. So I hope that doesn't happen. The next super chat is from Niall Harrington,
hello Niall,
the little local Irish man, who says, "Do you think fusion bugs will be used, or are they a drop narrative thread like Mark/Neva not showering?" If they do try to fuse, do you think Shin Spataro will be brought up? Big fan of throwing in a Mark showering roast into that question.
I actually didn't have a shower today because I was late coming home from the gym and I had to go straight here. Hey, if this podcast wasn't happening, I would have showered, but you're getting in the way of it. So just know that you're the problem, not me. Okay.
Wow.
I feel like they have to be used because like they made a point of dropping them, and I feel like that tells me that they're not going to use them in the fight, maybe, and they'll use them after at most. I feel like what you're saying about the Kibito stuff is probably legit. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it will probably just be ignored. It doesn't feel like there's time.
Why introduce it? Like, it's just such a bizarre thing to do. Like, there was so like even the smooth skin thing, like that would have been just such a perfectly fun thing to do with like fucking like with Bulma, even as a gag, but just none of it was done. It's just like, why? Like there was an entire scene spent going to this place, getting all these different bugs,
an entire episode. Or at least half of one, anyways.
Yeah, and it's just like it all amounted to nothing. Like, except they just got, like 2 sensu beans. That's effectively what it turned into.
Well, we don't know.
2 or 3
There's still more
beans.
series. It might have amounted
to something. There is, and I hope there is something that comes from it. I'm just saying that if it does turn out to be absolutely nothing, I will actually legitimately be like, what? I will be perplexed.
I hope that happens just because it'll be funny to hear Mark freak out about it. But I'm also team reconcile the continuity, because that is still a very funny answer to this. Anyhow, moving on to the next one is from Florida Man Trick, who says, with the way Majin Du copied Super Saiyan 3, parentheses obviously hilarious, by the way, it would be very funny if he tried to copy Fusion and just ate Ku. That would be good.
I do like that as an idea. just inhales him like Kirby.
Yeah. And it would be perhaps equally good if it didn't work. Unlike the Super Saiyan 3 thing, where he just tries to eat him and nothing comes from it, and he just like wiggles out of his giant cartoon mouth. That would be good.
That would be amazing.
The greatest fault and sin of Daima are inventing characters as good as Ku and Du, knowing that they don't come after, because we know it comes after, and it's Super, and Super doesn't have Ku and Du, and that's a tragedy.
True. That is heartbreaking. I mean, we spoke about it earlier, but like, Ku and Du are just phenomenal characters. It will be so upsetting to see them go.
Oh, man.
But for me, Hybis.
Oh, yeah, Hybis, too.
Honestly, I'll miss Du and Ku more than Hybis, to be honest.
Okay, well, I might have to vote.
They're
you
all
off
up
the
there.
Podcast.
They're all up there. It's something, a thought that just occurred to me, which has never occurred to me, because we've always said, like, Daima is a standalone series. Do not expect a Daima 2 or anything. But now that Ioku is like, yeah, this takes place in the main continuity, and we know how much Toyotaro loves to reconcile, wouldn't it be fun if a future Dragon Ball Super arc was returning to the Demon Realm, and we get to revisit these characters in a different context?
That would be really cool.
I'd
like that a lot.
Be down with that.
Not only would that be fun, I would go so far as to say that would fundamentally recontextualize Daima into being less frustrating in certain ways. Where now, instead of all of the time that we spent getting with these characters, especially early on and all that, instead of it being ultimately a little bit pointless because it's standalone, now this is like it's foundation that we're tapping back into this well in the future, and I think that would be really great. The next super chat, let me refine my place. The next super chat is from Red's Hideout, who says, shout out to Dragon Ball Trench Babies and Hood Rats that held it down during the manga drought. We made it, y'all. I got bad news. We might be headed for a worse drought, actually.
Oh my god. What a description.
Yeah.
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 Be interesting to see what's coming. I mean, we've got the one shot from Toyotaro coming literally as Daima ends. So yeah.
What is the one shot? Sorry, I don't actually know the story behind this thing.
Yeah, so the one shot is, I mean, what it is a chapter just to fill out the requisite number of chapters to release a physical volume is what it is.
Yeah.
But the story will be about Goten and Trunks and their like weird superhero Mr. Clean thing or whatever it's called that we saw in the superhero
really?
stuff. Yeah,
Really?
So more of that. But hey, people were clamoring for a superhero manga arc review, and the new one shot certainly adds meat to that. So that's an opportunity, I suppose.
Oh god, yeah. It's just after waiting a year to get that is just.
Well, it's just a one shot. And also,
I know it's just a one shot.
Toriyama died. Surely we can have some like contextual understanding here.
I can have contextual understanding, but just as a consumer who was waiting for more of the story, it's just, oh, okay, we're doing this now. We're doing what would effectively be like a filler episode, but okay, we're doing that.
Yeah,
we'll see how it turns out. Maybe there will be something more to it. Who knows?
Yeah, I feel like it will possibly end with like hey, the manga is coming back or something. So that could be cool, but who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next super chat is from our friend Arnolfo Mendez again, who says, the amount of slurs Frieza would scream if he saw this episode.
Yeah, I also saw that tweet.
It's true.
Yeah. If you get the Kai writer back, you'd have Simeon in like every sentence.
Oh yeah, Simeon.
Yeah, you're super Simeon, yeah.
The next super chat,
which is a great line.
It is a good line. The next super chat is once again from Jolly D Joestar, who says, this Super Saiyan 4 should have had pointy ears. I'm going to be honest, I'm surprised it doesn't.
Yes, pointy ears would have been so sick.
Yeah.
But I feel like at the same time, if they did throw pointy ears in there, you would then have to like maybe address the fact that, they spoke so much about pointy ears earlier in the series that like it might have distracted from story stuff. So.
Well, that's the point, is that like it's tying back into the other stuff where it's like, oh, pointy ears equals demon, and then like obviously the intent there would be, oh, he's got pointy ears because he got this from demon magic. But I do think it's tricky because like the whole point of this transformation seems to be tying into the Great Apes Saiyan ancestry stuff, and they are not demons. So, but then again, Great Apes have pointy ears. Yeah, Jinx.
Yeah, true.
So, yeah, I think it's kind of a missed opportunity.
I mean, if they did suddenly start being like, oh, and the Ozaru is from the demon realm, that would have like shaken the fandom to its core, and I think that would have been really funny. So, I'm also down with that. I know that's not what's being said, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next super chat is from, well, it's kind of a repeat. It's from Shadrio, who says, guys, we're missing the most important things here. We finally have a path towards canonizing Super Saiyan 5, Ultra Instinct plus Super Saiyan 4. JK.
Oh my god, yeah.
I'm glad we're all on board with this.
We're
if I ever see a giant like monkey Super Saiyan 4 with white hair, I'll actually just, you know what? That's a career for me.
I was gonna say, just hang up your hat. Like, I'm done now. We've hit that point.
We've had enough anime, folks. We're moving on.
Yeah,
that's enough Dragon Ball. Now we did it. That's enough for me. It took 33 years, but that's
it would be such a great full circle moment.
Oh my god!
I think it'd be good.
Yeah, Toyotaro just completely fucking nukes the entire franchise with that creative choice.
Toriyama's gone, gang. We're going back to AF.
Oh god. Back. I never went there, but yeah, okay.
Oh, that's the next video. Mark reviews all the Dragon Ball AF
my God, that would be
fan
so much
manga.
fun, actually.
Have legitimately, I've never seen a single page of it.
Wow.
See,
okay.
that sounds... Okay, hold on.
This might be a fun idea.
It sounds like absolute agony.
you writing it
abject
down?
agony.
I'm
am
writing
not
it
writing
down
it
right
down.
now. Don't worry.
Nice.
Oh my God.
Cool.
Closing thoughts, Mark?
I liked the episode. It was fun. Story is lacking, but what else is new?
Incredible work.
Okay, well, look, I'll close this out because I think Mark is literally somehow asleep with his eyes open.
Yeah,
I'm
he's
trying here,
sleepwalking.
guys. I really am trying.
Oh, bless him.
Yeah. It is 3 minutes past 11 p.m. and I have been up since 5:45 a.m.
Oh,
So
Pretty
that
good.
is vile.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, everyone. This was a really cool episode. I think we all enjoyed it in different ways. Only 2 episodes left now of Timer. It's gonna be an interesting one for sure. We have an interesting video coming up at the end of the week. We are almost at 1 million subscribers. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button because it would be
Please do.
unfortunate. not
We're
to
so
hit
close.
1 million.
So
We're
close to 1 million. It's
Tell your
we're
friends,
like
make
a
them
couple thousand
subscribe.
short. Yeah, go canvas your local neighborhood for Totally Not Mark subscribers.
Yep.
For the
Knock
rest
on
of this week, please.
doors, create business
Jesus
cards, hand them
Christ.
over. Maybe bring an iPad with you and like show them the like 9 retcon videos we've made over the past like 3 months. That would be cool. And yeah, it'll be great fun.
dear God, what have I done to deserve this?
Love you.
Okay, love you guys. Bye
Goodbye,
bye.
gang.
Bye bye. If you enjoyed this and would like to tune in live, be sure to head over to Totally Not Mark's main channel, where we live stream this podcast at 8 p.m. UK time. That's 2 p.m. Central every single week until the end of Timer. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.